being in this world for a few years, I believe in it heavily. And I'm not a social media guy at all. I don't like posting pictures of my food, but it's paid off. Like this, it pays off very handsomely. And now, I'm sure Gary Vee and all these guys, right?
Yeah.
You're always wondering how do these guys get all these deals? But if you continue doing this stuff, you're gonna get the deals too. I mean, people are now coming to me with deals,
Oh wow.
right? And I'm sitting here thinking, shit, how do I do all this stuff? Like how do I handle this? And people are coming to me with like business deals. So that's great. But we can talk about it. Let's go. Do your
All right.
intro, do your
Awesome.
thing. Let's have a conversation.
Well, I just started recording because you just started spitting out so much so much value. So I was like, I'm just gonna start right now. All right. Awesome.
No
Yeah.
problem.
So let's just start with a little bit of intro about yourself and like who you are, just for the viewers, pretty much.
All right. My name is Eric Coffie, and I do government contracting. I teach it. I educate thousands of people on working with the federal government, the powers that exist. And, even though our government itself, we claim is transparent, really it's more like a black box to get into this realm of government contracting. We hear about it. A lot of people may have watched the movie War Dogs, but they're not quite sure how to take advantage of it and how to leverage it for their businesses. And that's what I teach.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. So what was actually your first? How old are you now?
I'm 41.
You're 41. So when was your first like entrepreneurial journey? Like when did you sort of start your own business?
Oh, I started my entrepreneur journey starts back when I was a teenager, really. Like, I mean, as a teenager, I sold candy and things like that. So for me, I remember riding the bus to school and I would sell candy on the bus. You go to like BJ's and buy the big box of candy and you sell that stuff on the bus. But I mean, I think, I've always been more of an extrovert type of a person. And that goes back to my family. My mom, particularly, was a very religious person. And so we were raised in church and we would go to church like 4 times a week. And, and so, when your mom is like in charge of a church and running a church, you have to also work and participate. And as a kid, like even like 5 years old or 6 years old, I'd have to read the Bible in front of people. I'd have to do, I would have to go and sing in front of people. I played the piano and the keyboard, so I would have to perform. So for me, that allowed me to like be in front of people, right, and not be afraid, and to talk to adults and things like that. So that doing those things, and then like raising money in school, all that kind of stuff that we all do as kids, right? School has fundraisers. I always did really well at those things. And I remember, like, for us, and I know you're a lot younger, but when we had our fundraisers, I don't know if they still do this today, but if you raise sell so much, you get a ticket or you run a raffle and you get these prizes that are at these points.
Yeah.
And I always wanted like to be the top prize guy. And so that was always like my goal to be the top prize. But it made me very comfortable and confident talking to people of all sizes, races, ages. And so I sold things. I sold stuff. One time, it was like 4th of July or Memorial Day, one of those holidays, and my cousin, he lived in like a gated community, right, with all these like nice, suburban type houses. So the community planted flags in front of everybody's house. So I got up early in the morning and I took all the flags out of their houses, and then I went up to the shopping center. I cleaned them up, and I sold every single flag, and we made like a couple $100 selling all the free flags that we got out of the houses. And I don't think I've shared that story with anybody, Max. So you get a special.
Well, that is pretty special. Yeah, that sounds like Gary Vee when he I don't know if you heard of this time. He bought what did he so he got like these action figures, and he got a but he I don't know I think he got them because there was a shipment at the back of the store, and he took them
Uh-huh.
or something, and he went into the front of the store and then refunded them back in.
Uh-huh.
So,
Uh-huh.
or I can't remember how he did it, but I don't know if he bought, like, there was a huge clear out or something, and he bought a bunch of them. And then he went to it. Oh yeah, there was a huge clear out of store because they were closing. He went back to a different store, and he refunded them for the full price. So they were like, yeah. So he got
Oh,
them at like
right. They were clearing them out over here, and then he went back and
yeah, went to another
wow.
store and refunded
Yeah.
them, and he
Well,
made
Gary
like,
Vee is a big time like retail. Yeah, he's a big time like arbitrage guy. That's his
yeah,
thing is arbitrage.
yeah.
So
That's what he
that's
loves
cool.
to do. All right, awesome. So,
Yeah.
what was your first like? You had all these little fun like businesses that you did. What was your sort of did you go to university or college, or did you just go straight into running your own like starting your
I
own
went to
business?
University of Florida. No,
Okay,
I
nice.
went to University of Florida.
And what did you study?
Industrial engineering.
Industrial engineer. Okay, nice. So
Hmm.
after you did that, what did you sort of do after you did that? Did you go work for a company, or did you want to start your
No, so actually, when I was at the University of Florida, I co-founded the Entrepreneurs Club at UF. So I
own?
actually founded the Entrepreneurs Club at the University of Florida, and while there, I started a couple businesses. Um, being in engineering, and this is back in around 1999. I worked at a company called Navorous Technologies, and and so we basically were building. It's now they're not even called apps, but at the time it was just software for handheld devices to communicate with inside of gyms and fitness centers. And I built the software. Well, I didn't build it, but my team built it. We raised money for it,
Okay, wow.
and we raised over $100,000 in college for this software. My board of advisors were all multimillionaires. Okay, I got the largest gym owner and health and fitness center owner as one of my board of advisors to my company. I got
Wow.
the local venture capital firm, right? I got two of their guys that worked at the VC firm in Gainesville to be on my board of advisors, and I got the president of the business school at University of Florida to be on my board of advisors.
That's crazy.
It's pretty remarkable when I think about that, right? Like,
Yeah,
I'm like,
how
how did I do that?
you must have been like
Huh?
what, like 20, 20,
No,
19,
yeah, I was
20?
probably 19. Yeah, probably
19?
19, 20.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's crazy what like some people do at such a young age and stuff.
Yeah, it is crazy when you think about it because my friends were all partying and hanging out, and I was here starting this, boring entrepreneurs club, right? And like, what is this guy talking about? You know, and I always believed that there were certain people that were meant to, write resumes, and there's others that were meant to read resumes. And I said I want to be the guy that reads the resumes.
Yeah. So what do you think actually start like do you think you were born with that or just from because there's some people that start their business super like they just they're always just like entrepreneur like when they're 14 when they were 6 when they're 8 they were just selling stuff or doing stuff like that. So do you think
Hmm.
you were a lot like was there some event in your life that sort of you saw that you were like I don't want to work I don't want to work for somebody else I want to do my own thing.
No, again, I was that kid. I was the guy that was always selling stuff, right? I sold candy, I sold flags. I mean, I always did that. And again, I think it was partly my mom. Like I got into it, but it wasn't really. My mom had a business, but she didn't really know she had a business. She was taking care of elderly people, and I helped her out with that stuff. So I was always helping her out with the paperwork and things like that because she didn't know how to type or she didn't know how to do, she did everything manually, and so I would help her out. But she had like a daycare for elderly people in her house. And so she would take in these elderly people and basically provide nursing care for them. Because when they went to the hospitals and they went to nursing centers, they were being not abused, but they were being neglected.
Yeah.
So she decided as a healthcare professional her whole life that, these people would be better served being inside of my home than being inside of a nursing facility. And so she did that for a while, and I helped out you know, with like I remember we had to do a fire escape plan in the house, and I drew the fire escape plan, and that passed like city inspection, like the county inspection. Like because I'm kind of an artist, like so but I actually drew it out, and it's funny. I'm gonna show you something. Like I still have like my graphics books here, like that
Oh wow.
actually used to write with, um, but I mean I don't know. So I remember doing that, And I think that every win that you receive as a kid, you get more and more confident, right? So every time you do something like, okay, you sold candy, like, oh, that worked. You sold blow pops, like that worked. You know, you sold the flags, you're like, you get stronger, right? And
Yeah.
you're like, man, I could do anything, right? And that's kind of what happens is that you start to build that momentum. And then when I went to college, you know, you just kept, you know, full steam ahead, right? You kind of, I started the Entrepreneurs Club. Okay, now we're being recognized for creating an organization on campus. After doing that, um, a promotional marketing company guy that I knew, he was selling like T-shirts and cups and mugs, you know, the stuff that has your name on it, your logos and things like that. Um, we found a workaround at the university to where we could make T-shirts. All the universities in the country, they have an agreement with like the NCAA that you know all their products have licensed apparel, so you have to pay them like a licensing fee to use their logos and team information, right? There was an exception where if you had a university organization, right, to that was associated with the apparel or the product, whatever it was, then they didn't have to pay a licensing agreement fee to the university.
Okay.
So when I saw that, because I started the Entrepreneurs Club, I was like, oh, I can take and put my Entrepreneurs Club information on this apparel, right? And then we could have the university's logo next to it. Well, I did a campaign with Papa John's Pizza.
Okay.
And what I did was we bought T-shirts and we said, okay, we're going to put the Papa John's logo with the University of Florida Gators logo on a shirt, and we're going to give it out at games, and you just buy the shirts from us. So I'll buy the shirts for like whatever, 50 cents a shirt or $1. Papa John's pays me $1.50. I make like 50 cents a shirt, and we give out like 5,000 shirts at a football game. You're going to have Papa John's on 5,000 people at a game that's going to get national coverage.
Wow.
I did it once, and the university was like, "No, you can't do this anymore." So they changed the rule. They changed the rule, the policy, to stop that. It was so successful that they're like, the university felt like they lost advertising dollars, right? Because Papa John's got in for like a couple grand, but those advertising spots on TV are like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I
Yeah,
got
and
them the
the
advertising
camera
revenue.
pans into the camera pans in the crowds. It's just Papa John's
Right.
everywhere.
And it's Papa John's everywhere.
And then the advertiser are probably thinking like, how why is there so many Papa John's here and stuff?
Right. How is there freaking 3,000 Papa John's here? But it was awesome because we jumped in a van and we had all these boxes of shirts, and we would just drive down like frat row, and we would show up at like a frat house and then open up a box of shirts and be like, free shirts, let's go. You guys going to the game? And like, yeah, like boo, 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 boo. And then there's a whole trail of like where people walk towards the stadium, and we would just stand out there with like boxes and it's like free shirts, boom, wear this, boom, 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 free Gator shirts. And like they're all going to the Gators game. Who doesn't want a free Gator shirt? Like you are like, you get me? Like and so it just worked really well. So that was kind of like my preeminent like college foray that worked out before I went out and actually launched a real business that I raised money for. But I launched several other businesses in college that I didn't raise money for, that we just used our own money. That people told us it wouldn't work, but the one that I raised money for was really good.
Okay, nice, awesome. So let's actually jump into that. So you graduate from college, you started all these businesses, you got a little bit of experience under your belt.
Yep.
What happens now? What sort of going
All
through
right,
your
so what happened was one of my partners in the main business that we took off on, and by the way, which is really cool, it's the first time I ever flew a private plane, which was awesome.
Whoa.
Uh, because one of my investors had a private plane. And so we flew one time, and it was super, super cool. And I was
That's
like,
awesome.
man, this is good. I like this kind of life. But one of my partners, he was a foreign national, and our very first investor could not invest in our second round. And what happened was, because he couldn't invest in our second round, that was going to threaten my partner's immigration status, and so he became really angry and started making threats to the other people like in the company, and almost like a domestic violence type of situation where
Okay,
I
wow.
felt endangered. And I said, look, I can't work like this anymore. This is a very unhealthy environment for me. He was yelling and screaming and all this stuff. And so I literally just walked away from everything. Um, and I called all my investors. I called everybody, and I said, "Listen, this is what's been happening, and I feel like maybe potentially my life could be in danger because he's making threatening remarks. And I'm sorry. I apologize." And I just laid everything on the table, and I told him, and everybody was okay with it. Like no one was mad, no one was upset. I just walked. I just left. So following that, I got a job. I worked for 6 months, right? And I saved up money to become a realtor. Um, and I wanted to become a realtor, and I went to a couple of different agencies, and they said you can't become a realtor if you're broke, like you need money. So I'm like, okay. So I worked at a call center, and I saved up like $30,000,
Wow.
and yeah,
In 6 months?
yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
that's
I didn't go
insane.
out. I didn't eat out. I didn't go any place.
Yeah,
I
you must
saved
have been
up
motivated.
and missed. No, I mean, you know what? That seems like a lot. Maybe it was 15,000. That seems more realistic. It was something to that effect because it had to be like 15,000 based on my pay. But
That's
I saved every dollar that I made.
that's crazy.
Everything. I saved every penny. Like I didn't go out. I didn't drink. I don't. Well, you know, I don't have a lot of bad habits. I'm not a flashy guy. I was living with my parents, and I would just go to work and then go home. That was it. So I
Yeah.
saved up all the money. Let's maybe it was 15,000. It's been a while. Okay, let's say it was 15 because it was everything that I made. I mean, it was like 99% of what I made, I kept. So probably it's 15. Let's say it's 15 grand. So it's 15,000. Then I get into real estate. I became a realtor. Yeah, that makes sense. So then, okay. So I saved the 15. I became a realtor, and then in my first year in real estate, I think I made like 30 grand. But then the
Damn.
next year, I did probably about 70,000, and then the following year, I did over 130,000, and then like my fourth year, I did 180,000, something to that
Wow.
effect. So I started. So I was so basically from the time I was about 22, I was making over $100,000 a year.
Wow. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. But
So
I was disheartened because um, when I was in college, a friend of mine, one of my good friends, his father's an entrepreneur, and he gave me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I
yeah.
read that book, and I said, I want to buy real estate. But when I came back from after college, the market was going up, and I missed the when it was down cycle.
Oh, okay.
So it was all I had missed the previous downturn. So the market was already going like in an upward swing, and it was made it really difficult for me to actually buy and invest
Yeah.
um, at the time. So, but during the time I did real estate, I did buy 4 properties, and I helped my family accumulate 10 properties, and we had literally I think we had 13 properties combined, and we had about 1.3 million in equity in the properties.
Wow. That's incredible.
Now, my biggest regret, Max, I'll tell you, I should have I should have kept it all for myself
Okay.
because once I did that for people in my family, like then they told me, "Oh, Eric, this is my property now," because I
Oh,
put it in
wow.
their name. Like,
Yeah.
but they didn't know anything about real estate investing. They knew nothing about this stuff. They didn't know anything about they I did everything for them. Finding the property, doing the deal, finding the appraisal, finding the inspector, finding the only thing they did was sign.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So then when the market came, the recession around 2007, 2008, basically everyone who had stuff, with the exception of my mom, because my mom and dad allowed me to control that stuff that they had. My uncle, my sister, and my other people, they took control of their own assets. They lost everything. like, except for their primary houses. And we kept all of our stuff. I had one of my properties I did a short sale for, but we kept, our stuff. In fact, I just finished right now last year, one of my mom's properties. We just finished selling it and fixing it. And I estimate that she probably, her, over the 10 or 12 years she had it, she generated 1,500 a month, which is about 18,000 a year, right? Do that
Yeah.
times 10, 12 years, right? That's a couple hundred grand. It appreciated 350,000. So she had like a $500,000 swing in income
Wow.
from that
Yeah.
one property.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's actually incredible. All the stuff you sort of done in
So
your
I
life,
mean,
from jumping
yeah,
to different businesses and all this. That's really interesting.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So
It's been pretty fun. I've had a good time.
so what happened with I just read a bit about your bio, and you had the crash, and so did that affect you heavily? So like did you learn anything from that a lot, or like any lessons
So
you
when
could
the
take
real
from
estate market crashed, right before actually, it's interesting. Before the real estate market crashed, I uh, one thing, Max, I'll tell you, and I'll tell your audience out there, that people talk about getting a mentor. I was very lucky that I always sought out information, and typically the people who had it were older people than myself.
it? Yeah,
Okay, and I had a older guy in my community, and a lot of us who come from communities that are not so fortunate, right? That you're in a lower income community. You know, we tend to, as we become adults and we become educated, we tend to leave those communities and go off for like the big cities and right. And
yeah,
you want to move to New York or you move to LA or you want to move like so you tend to do that. And there was a guy in my community where I was from, the poor neighborhood, and he said to me, he was rich. He said, "Son, let me tell you something. You don't have to go outside of your community to be successful. You can make money right here in your community." And he told me that, and he had a lot of real estate. And he said to me, "Hey, listen, how about this? How about you and I work together and do some real estate development? I'll put up the cash. You go out and get the licensing because you're college educated. You go out and get the licensing, and I'll put up the money. And I know construction, but I don't have a licensed person that I can trust, right?" So this guy was probably in his 60s, 70s, I know at the time, and I'm early 20s. And I'm like, he says, don't think that you have to go off to these other neighborhoods to be successful and to build your wealth. And I kind of like hung around, followed this guy, and so when I was doing real estate, I decided to actually leave real estate and study to get my contractor's license for construction. So
okay,
before the market even crashed, I made the decision to walk away from real estate cold because I saw this as a greater opportunity for long term, and it did align with the Rich Dad Poor Dad book that I had read.
yeah,
So I did that. So about a year before the real estate market crashed, I left real estate, started studying for my contractor's license, uh, and then when the market crashed, obviously the real estate business wasn't going to do anything. But then I couldn't do the development business because nobody was buying houses. And that's really the turning point of the story, which is where one of my mechanics that used to fix air conditioning and electrical in my house, he introduced me to someone who was doing government contracting in that 2007.
oh, okay. And then
That's my first time I ever heard about government contracting.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like
And then
that's pretty interesting.
that guy, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was just gonna say
That guy
that.
was also about 20 years older. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's a little bit just breaking up a bit. Yeah, I was just gonna say that government, like nobody really thinks about government contracting, right? Like that the government buys stuff and sells stuff, and then when you sort of find this whole world, it's like a whole new market that opens up to you, and you're just like,
Right.
wow, this is incredible.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so again, like I said, I went ahead and I broke in and I learned about it. And he told me, he said, "Hey, the government buys everything, and there's billions and billions of dollars out there." And I'm like, billions. Like again, we're talking about, you know, 2007. Billions was like a trillion today,
Yeah.
right? So 13 years ago, a billion to us is the same when we're talking about, $1 trillion today. I'm like, billions? I was like, I've never heard of nothing like that, nothing that big in my life. And he's like, no, it's real. So I started studying it. And again, I had nothing else to do. So I started studying the market and learning about it. And we start working together as partners. And that's what happened is that he told me about it, but I had to do my own research, my own due diligence. And from that, I started learning about contracting. He had a business for 20 years and he fixed air conditioners. And he said, look, if you can learn this thing, it's going to be really valuable to you. And that's when we start learning it. And we work together. And again, what I found, Max, which is interesting, and I want to say this because a lot of us, the younger people, I say younger, but you guys are younger than me, but you know, I'm younger than those people at the time, right? So you're where I was at then, okay, in terms of age line. But the value that I had, and I say this to kids, you have value. The value that I brought was I was college educated, so I had reading, writing, comprehension. These people were just hard workers. They had built their businesses off of like brute force. They were smart in business, but they didn't have the technical skills. They had the technical work skills, but not like technical writing skills. And those were things that they were missing to complete their businesses.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
brought that element to the table. And I say that because again, depending upon who's listening on your audience, you could bring something like that to the table, right? You're thinking, well, I can't add nothing to these guys. Well, actually, you can. The people in my industry want to focus on their business. That's it. So if there's another aspect that can help drive that business, that's where you can shine and be great and add value. And that's what I did is that I helped take care of all of the administration and the paperwork to what it took to get the government contract. I went to the classes. They hate going to classes. I was sitting in classes and I was gobbling up the information because again, I'm right. I'm a college student. I'm an engineer. Like I know how to learn. Right.
Yeah.
I've got great reading comprehension skills. I've read most of the books behind me here. So, my ability to read and comprehend information, to take tests, I do well on testing. That's the world that I grew up in. Okay. I can't fix anything. I can't paint a building. I can't rebuild a motor. I can't, I'm terrible with my hands, but my brains, I'm good at. So that's the skill set I brought. We worked together for a few years, did well. And then I was working with two companies. The government made me choose which company, one over the other. And then I ended up working with his brother, and we did extremely well. And we were making money while everybody else was struggling in life at the time, because everyone in 2008 was broke. They were losing their
Yeah.
houses. Um, I had a friend of mine who wanted to commit suicide because he lost his $10 million business. I knew
Wow.
someone that
Yeah.
did commit suicide because they lost their business, the multi-million-dollar business. They lost their house, and a lot of people. I mean, it was just a tough time for people. And
Yeah.
and
I remember that. Well, I was 8 at the time, and I remember going with my mom into we'd go into the U.S. And I remember I went when I was younger, and all before the crash, and all these stores retail stores were all open. And then we went again, and pretty much we went to this mall, and everything was just shut. It was just boarded up, everything was shut, and it was crazy to see. It was
right,
all these businesses had just gone under from this crazy crash.
think about that. And again, if you were a business owner, right? It's like the lights just turn off. It's like a switch, it just turned off. And so one day you went from making all this money to having nothing.
Yeah.
And so people took it. A lot of people can't handle that. And one of the guys who really helped me out when I first got started, he's now an employee. He had a $10 million a year company that he lost, and he's never
Wow.
been able to recover since.
Yeah. Yeah. That
And I was, imagine, I wasn't your age, but I was still in my 20s, and I was thriving and succeeding, right? And
yeah.
I wasn't smarter than these people. I was just working in a different market. I was working on the government side as opposed on the private side. and
Okay, yeah.
that's where I signed. I wasn't any smarter. I just worked. I did contracts with the government, so my contracts kept getting bigger and more often because the government, when in times of crisis, the government spends more,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So while
Yeah.
everyone else closed their doors, the government opens up the floodgates and it's like, come on in. We need more of this, right? And that's what happened.
Wow.
And that's what made the difference. So I'm here in my 20s, and people in their 40s are like asking me for a job, right? So if somebody who used to I look up to, right, that lived in $1 million house is now living in the basement with his in-laws and asking me, the 27-year-old kid, for a job.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's insane. That's an insane
Think about
experience
it.
to live through. Like
Right. Yeah.
like you were 27, you lived through that crash. Like I'm coming to sort of like the sort of adulthood and living through this like the pandemic and all this sort of crash we're having right now.
Right.
Actually, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Like, how is sort of the government reacting the same as they did in 2008, and sort of because I'm
Absolutely.
seeing that they're injecting lots of money into the market, into businesses, and all this other.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I right now I'm busier than I've been in the last 3 years.
Wow.
They're throwing so much money at everything. They're spending, like, the government is on a spending. They're Listen. Someone said to me, the government is on a spending war. They're at a war to spend as much money as humanly possible. Real
Yeah.
talk.
Just trying to
They're
inject.
just spend, spend, spend. I mean, they're so. I mean, we're super busy. I mean, I got to call. What's today? Friday. I got a call 2 days ago. The guy calls me up and says, "Hey, Eric, I I just got approval for some money. I got to spend a $500,000. Can you help me out?" He calls back. Check this out. He's got a project for me. He calls back 2 hours later. He goes, "Eric, I was wrong. It's $1 million. Can you still help me out?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can help you out." He's like, "All right." He goes, "I don't want any crap out of you. You got 10 days. Give me back some numbers, but I got to get this thing pushed in because I got this money that we've got to spend." I got a call like that 2 weeks ago. It was $5 million.
Holy shit. That's,
Yeah,
that's
that's
crazy.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that, but that's
yeah.
when you're a very established business right now, right?
Yeah. So I mean, again, I've been able to. I've been working at this for a while, right? I didn't just show up yesterday. I planted the seeds. I built the relationships. I cultivated these relationships. I nurtured them, and so I've developed them over the last 2 years. And now, and again, this is something from scratch, right? This is not even. We're not talking about stuff that I did 20 years ago. We're talking about stuff that I'm doing in 2020 today. That I started building those relationships back in 2018 in a whole new market, in a new segment. People that I've never knew me, never heard of me before. I took it from zero to now we're negotiating about 12 million in contracts.
Wow. And what's your business right now?
Yeah.
Is it because I looked up on your LinkedIn and you do steel and steel
So
construction or
still, so I yeah, I was doing this. I was part of the steel industry. That was what I was doing for many years. Uh, I've really gotten away from that when I started doing the YouTube channel and the podcast. I got away from the steel building industry. I found it hard to do both at the same time. But yeah, my last contracts. Well, it changed now because of PPE. But my company Evankoff, the last major contract that I did was with steel buildings, but that was in 2018. And then I kind of rebooted it with the whole PPE stuff, and we've been doing a lot of PPE contracts with Evankoff. But I have probably 9 to 10 different sources of streams of income now, and
okay.
that's just one of them.
Okay, so do you mind talking about those different streams that you have right now?
So you know, when I, when I when I was doing the consulting back in '08, I branched off on my own and I started doing the steel buildings. Around 2012, 2013, I got beat up pretty bad in the market with non-government jobs, and it almost caused me to go bankrupt. So I had to rebuild back my business. I lost everything. I went into debt, and around 2015, 15, 16, I finally came from up under that, started focusing more back on the government contracts, and then built that business up. But when I came back and I rebounded, Max, I said to myself that I can't do things the same way I did it, because in the event that there's another crash, I wanted to be prepared. So I started buying real estate as I started making money. Nothing big, nothing, I'm not Grant Cardone and that kind of crap. I wasn't buying, apartment complexes. But, I found a market that suited me. With the resources that I had, I bought what I could afford, $100,000 house here, a $50,000 apartment there. And I just started accumulating properties. And so I got up to 13 units. And yeah. And so from that, that was something that I did. And then at the same time, I got a really big contract with my steel business. And then I launched the YouTube channel. Okay. I wrote a book. And so, I looked at it as that I wanted to insulate myself from any future downturns.
Okay.
So I started creating, you know, um, things that, again, had long-term value, right? So these things initially take time to produce, but in the long term, right, they continually generate income.
Okay.
So
So you pretty
I
much just
launched
started
my
to
YouTube.
so you started to diversify into different areas
Yeah,
pretty much just to
right, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I did. And then, so, like my real estate pays for my living. So none of my other monies that I made, I needed it to support myself because my real estate paid for that. So my real estate, the
Okay.
passive income from my real estate properties pays for my whole living. Okay. So then I didn't need the monies that I brought in from other sources to live anymore.
Okay.
Right. And I that was strategic because I felt as though, like the people that were in the Great Depression, if we have another recession and all my money dries up, how do I live? I don't want to have to go back to my mom's house anymore, right? So I said to myself, how do I insulate from that? So when I was start making cash again, I bought real estate. I put down 20%, I put down 30%, and then I paid it off. I mean, I have 5 of my buildings right now that, they'll be paid off probably by the year's out,
Oh wow.
and I'll owe nothing on them. And so again, those things produce cash flow that then pays for the house that I live in, right? And then I have an Airbnb, and then that supports that. So I have the Airbnb and then the real estate, and those streams. And then from the YouTube channel, I picked up a consulting client, and I helped their business grow into the federal arena. I get a retainer for that. I get a percent of the sales from that activity. Okay. Then I have my products. So I have my book that I have out there. I'm writing 2 more books that I'll be launching.
Nice.
I'm gonna get up. I want to get up to about 5 or 6 books. So that
Wow.
way, when you go to Amazon and they're recommending books, they're not just recommending mine plus 2 other authors. I want them to recommend all the recommendations will be mine.
What
I
actually
don't want someone else. Huh?
what book do you have right now? What's it called?
It's called the $1 Billion Playbook.
The $1 Billion
Uh,
Playbook.
yep. Hold on. Give me a second.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wrote this book, and I wrote it at a really dark time when I was really down and out. It's a very short read. It's only $12, but what I have in here, and one of the things that I would, again, anybody listening to this, whenever I go to do something, I look at other people who are successful in that space, and I figure out what are they doing, right?
Yeah.
And then I just say, okay, I could do that in my space. So I saw this author that wrote a book, and at the time he was referencing apps. And what are some of the top productivity apps on the marketplace? I know, we don't know all the apps out there in the world, right? Like, how
Yeah.
would you know, Max, what are all the apps out there available to you? So for people who want to improve productivity, he wrote a book that lists all these different productivity type of apps. Okay. Because
Okay.
like, if you go to the marketplace, how do you know, how do you know how to find apps to accomplish a specific purpose?
Yeah.
there was no way to sort for that, right? I feel like this and I want to accomplish this. What app do I use? There was no, and so this guy did that. So I said to myself, in my industry, there's a collection of websites that I constantly use to help me in my government contracting business. So I took those websites and I listed them here in the book, right? And how do you use them? And then I organized the book on, depending upon what stage you're at in your government contracting business, these are the websites that I used when I was at that stage and how I use them. And so these are all places where if you want to start doing government contracting, where you would go to start. And again, if you go online and try to Google it, there's no Google for, I want to do government contracts. What websites do I need? You can't Google that,
Yeah.
right? Think about it.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
would you Google? What would you Google?
Yeah. It's like there's nothing. There's no specific resource out there that will tell you, hey, you need to do this, or hey, you need to go to these.
These are the places where you go,
Yeah.
right? And on top of that, Google is big in advertising. So what you're going to get is a bunch of advertisers selling to you that's going to distract you from going to what you're trying to accomplish, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to get all these people, oh, we're going to sell you this service, like this. That's not what I'm looking for. I just want to know, where do I go to do this thing? Like, I don't, right? So you got to go through all these advertisements and basically commercials to find out. So what I did was I jotted down the most commonly used websites that I use on a day-to-day basis for my government contracting business. I put in the book. Boom, just like
Awesome.
that. I did that. And then from the YouTube channel, people start asking me about training. And I put out a course for training, a free course that then on the back of that, they asked me if I could do a paid course. So I have a paid course that I sell on top of a free course that I give away.
Okay, nice, nice. Yeah, that's like the Gary V. Have you read his book, Jab Jab Things Jab Jab Right or something?
No, I haven't. No, I
I
haven't.
haven't read it either, but it's one book I want to read. But it's pretty much the concept of it is just give value, give value, give value, give value, give value,
Right.
and then then you sort of ask, right? Then you sort of you have your products
Right.
or whatever you want
And
them
that's
to
what I
sort of
do.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
what I do. I
Awesome.
do that. I do that, but I do it because of my passion for what I'm doing and delivering. This is what I do day in, all day, all night. Um, and so it's not, my purpose is not driven by money.
Yeah, you
Um,
just
and
love
so it
the
makes it
game.
really easy for me to do. Well, again, I was personally affected by this, right? Like I shared with you, a friend of mine wanted to commit suicide. I know another guy committed suicide. When I was down and out, I almost went bankrupt. The government bailed me out, not in terms of a bailout money wise, but they helped me by giving me contracts and opportunity to get back on my feet. And I really believe in the power of leveraging government contracts to grow and build a successful business. And any time in the economy, right? Regardless of the economy, your business is going to thrive. You're not hearing about Boeing going out of business, Northrop Group, Booz Allen Hamilton. No government contractor company is going out of business.
Yeah, yeah. That because the government's just they
None of
support.
them. Those people are not on the news. They're not crying. You don't see them. They're not complaining about. They're not asking for bailouts or handouts or hand ups because their bailout is the government. They're already doing contracts. That's essentially their bailout. Like that's what they get.
Yeah,
So, so for me, I believe so passionately in it. I'm so strong about it that I want to share it with everybody. I want to share it with the world and let people know that, if you have a business and you sell anything that the government buys, then you should really look at this as a marketplace for yourself. And even like last night, I had this 16-year-old kid on there on my show that is doing $10,000 a month in government sales, and he's selling like food products to jails and prisons.
wow,
He's selling like canned corn and canned goods to jails and prisons in Minneapolis.
that's crazy.
Out of it, by the way, he's working out of his mom's basement, almost like one of those classic startup stories.
Oh
He
yeah,
started at 15 years old. He's now 16.
damn. So pretty much what he did is he went like he learned the contracts and then he found a business to supply pretty much win the contracts and then supply the goods to the government.
Yep.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's still crazy to think about it. Like 16, 17 years old. It's like the majority of like majority the majority. I remember when I was 16, 17, I was just trying to survive high school.
And you know, it's funny. One of my buddies said he's like, this guy's always Eric. When I was 16, I was selling weed. You know, I mean, everybody's different, right? Like
Yeah,
everybody's different. You know, I mean, you know, yeah, you were just trying to survive. You weren't thinking about running a business.
yeah, it's crazy.
I
There's
was
like
thinking about
people.
girls.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There-
I was into girls. So for me, I was like,
yeah.
yeah, I'm trying to go to parties and hang out with girls and you
Yeah,
know,
trying to party,
kind
trying
of
to,
stuff.
yeah. So,
Yeah, that's what.
actually, there was one guy in my school that actually he was sort of similar, but he didn't get into contracts, but he just went into landscaping and then built his business. Like he started mowing lawns, then he built a landscaping business, and then he started actually
That's
he did actually go into government contracts of well like municipality of like
yeah.
police force for so he was
Okay.
a black belt in jiu-jitsu and he would go in and train police officers and this guy was like
Nice.
17, 18 or something and you'd go train these 30, 40-year-old police officers in jiu-jitsu
Yeah. Nice.
and tactics like that.
Sweet.
So
Sweet.
that was pretty interesting. So what would you say, because we covered a lot of stuff here, so what would you say, like thinking back, what were some key things that you learned the most from for government contracting? Like if you could go back, would you be like, oh, not to make that mistake again, or would you have pivoted a little bit differently?
In terms of the government contracting world, you know, one of the things I tell people is I have a really difficult time working with municipalities, and I tell people, you know, that's a really quick way to go bankrupt. Um, I would like to see people, you know, if you're going to get into the space, I always tell people to start with the federal level because they pay you faster and they pay you on time. And the municipalities don't always do that. And it's really difficult when you're getting started with a business and a little bit of cash flow to try to float money for, you know, a couple months.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So municipal. Yeah. I was sort of because I was looking into that as well, just for personal. I was looking into different businesses. I'm interested in real estate and government contracting as well. Right now, I'm just sort of seeing which one I sort of want to go down into, either multifamily units, or go into the government contracting space and learn how to do government contracting and then do consulting for small businesses. So with that, so actually, I'm more a personal question. So with that, do you do when you first started? Um, did you do consulting? Did you approach businesses to do consulting for them, or did you just go learn the contracts and then go to the businesses and more of like, hey, can you provide this for my company, which is then gonna provide that to the government?
When I first started, I did consulting because, again, the person who introduced me to government contracts needed me to help his business grow. So I worked for what I did, you know, one of the things I always tell people, and one of my friends who I've known since that time, he always says this, and I have to say it just because it makes a lot of sense. I never took a job. I never took a job. I never wanted to be their employee. I always
Okay.
wanted to be their partner.
Yeah.
So, you know, and that's a very important distinction that a lot of people miss out on. I never took a salary position. I never took I said, I eat what I kill.
Okay. Yeah.
So if I don't kill it, I don't eat. It's something it does for people that's really uh it's very different emotionally when you're driven and you have to perform. And it does something for you. It keeps you up late, it wakes you up early. Uh it's self-motivation at that point,
Yeah.
right? More like self-preservation. but but you know, but when you have the comfort of the money and the stability, uh, something about that can make you lazier and not as motivated. And the classic example are government employees, right? So without the fear of being fired or laid off or replaced, you fall into a comfort zone that doesn't go well with entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so for me, when I first started, I say consultant because it would have been very easy to be put on payroll and make, whatever they want to pay me.
Yeah.
What that did was they held me at a different respect level, right? When I did that. So if you go
Okay.
in and you take the money, then you're going to be treated like everybody else in the office employees.
Yeah.
But if you come in and you want to, and listen, it doesn't matter what age. Because if you go in and say, hey, I want to provide tremendous value to you, I want to do a kick ass job and help grow your business out. And by the way, you don't pay me or owe me anything until I deliver, you're going to be looked at up here, right? And you're going to have more access to the CEO, more access to the president, more access to the high level directors, depending upon the size of the company, more access to high level managers or team members than the guy who took a job.
Okay. Yeah.
And you're going to be
Yeah.
treated with more respect. And that's one of the things that I say, Max, that I did early on that allowed me to be treated more as a peer than as an employee.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
today, these people are some of my best friends that we vacation with.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, well, because they're the only people that can afford to do it,
Yeah. True.
right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like you can't go to everybody. Otherwise, some people you have to pick up their tab for them.
Yeah.
So these guys are the only people that really can afford to do it, and not only just have the money, because a lot of people have money and no time. Some people have a bunch of time and no money, but they have, we have the luxury, not luxury, but we have, we've been fortunate enough to put ourselves in a position where to have both time and money to do it.
Okay. So yeah, we're coming to the end here. We got like another couple minutes. I've got one last question. So what characteristics do you think make um like what characteristics are important that you've sort of seen yourself and other entrepreneurs that make them sort of successful, and what ones do you think that people need to more on, train themselves more on? What like whether that's maybe like, well, we can also go into skills as well, like maybe sales, management, leadership, all that sort of stuff, and personal characteristics.
You know, I've seen people that were introverts successful, extroverts successful, salespeople successful, non-salespeople successful. I just interviewed a girl who was started off as an IT and accountant that became president and CEO of a company. To me, what I think makes people successful is really the fact is, I think people. I'm trying to say this with gestalt. I don't want to tell people what to do, but I think if more people were more stoic and neutral, right, and how they dealt with success, failure, the ups and swing, the downswing. I think that if more people were stoic and focused on delivering, right, value and showing up, I think much more people would be successful. Because I don't, from my life experiences, I've seen people with varying degrees of education, varying degrees of technical skills, varying degrees of experience be successful, right? So I can't attribute any of those factors to the person being successful, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
right? So for me, the only factor that I can attribute are the ones where the real difference makers, and again, if I look into my books, and if you go to History Channel and you watch like Post Serial and Kellogg's, the real difference is not that those people didn't face turbulence, conflict, obstacles, hills, roadblocks, setbacks. It's how they handled those things. And the closest philosophy that I could attribute to handling of that is Stoicism. And, I'm really good right now with managing the ups and downs of business and ups and downs of life. And, I credit that with that allows me when other people are fearful to be bold, and when other people are bold to be fearful, because I'm managing my emotions. So I
Okay.
think, for me, if you look at Gary Vee or Tim Ferriss or Elon Musk, all these people, they're managing their emotions. They're managing you know, Elon Musk is really good about saying, you know, they say, Elon, how do you think, you know, the rocket's gonna do? He goes, I'm not sure. We'll see what happens, right?
Yeah,
I mean, huh?
yeah, yeah.
Right? It's
I watched the video and he exactly said that. Yeah.
That's what he
Uh,
says.
yeah.
And people think he's a crazy person. He's not a
Yeah.
crazy person. He did everything he could to make it go well. He can't control the outcome, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, that's what people can do is you do everything that you can to ensure that it goes well, but you can't control the outcome. I've had people that I know of, a friend of mine, one particular example, a woman who was she did an $80 million construction project. She lives in Colombia. The project went very well. The how money goes up and down, right? So where are you from, Max?
I'm from Canada.
Okay,
Ottawa, Canada.
so the Canadian dollar sometimes is strong, sometimes it's weak against the U.S. dollar, right?
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
So imagine if you do a project, right, and you're doing a project in the United States, but because it's a Canadian company, you're getting paid in Canadian dollars, and the Canadian dollar goes down 30% value. Did you do anything wrong?
No.
So you got penalized for something that was outside of your control. You got punished for something that was outside of your control. And now multiply that on an $80 million project.
Wow.
So, and that's the way that, so, you know, what happens is, to me, the people who make it can manage that. They can manage that situation.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. They, the regular person out there, the average Joe, is going to be crapping his pants, you know, pulling his hair out. And that's not going to be helpful towards resolving the problem or getting, you know, moving the goalposts. Um, but if you listen to a Gary Vee or if you listen to a Tim Ferriss, or they go, look, we're playing the long game. So that temporary setback is not part of the long. It's not the long game. That's just
Yeah.
a temporary setback. Max, I'm sure when we talked about when you're in high school, there were things in your life that were painful, that were scary. There were certain exams and certain tests, right? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
You remember being nervous for a test and scared, right,
Yeah.
for the test?
Yeah.
Do you remember? Do you ever have a time where you remember failing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And how did it? Did it hurt? Was it painful?
Yeah. Yeah. The
Right?
yeah.
Let me ask you this, Max. How do you feel today about that test?
It it hasn't really crossed my mind until now you brought it up. It doesn't really matter that much. Yeah.
That's the same way that the successful people have introspection on the particular instance at hand. When you are experiencing that particular situation today at hand, it's the hardest thing for you. But if you have introspection, and again, you practice the philosophy of managing the ups and down swings, you know, right? Like I just explained to you how I demonstrated. 10 years from now, this particular instance, it won't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
It won't matter.
That's actually very interesting. I had a guy on who's a property management owner, and I sort of asked him the same question. He gave me sort of a similar result to well, a similar answer to what you just gave with not in the same like context, but he pretty much says how he looks at stuff as he just stays sort of neutral, right? Like his losses, he doesn't worry about them, and his wins, he doesn't get overly excited. He just keep going forward.
Think about it, Max. Is that the same thing?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much.
It is. It's the exact same thing.
Yeah,
You manage that. You manage the ups and downs. You don't get too happy. You don't get too upset.
yeah.
You just keep going. You keep forward. That's the same philosophy the New England Patriots practice.
Wow, yeah.
Watch the New England Patriots game. They're not celebrating when they score touchdowns.
They just go.
They just go. They don't celebrate. There's no celebration. They're not on the sidelines. They're not doing dances. There's not smiles. They just go.
They're like
They
move forward to the
they
next.
go. They're a machine. Move forward to the
That's
next
awesome.
play, the next strategy. The next what situation we're in now. What's the next situation that we've got to address? And that's the same way that I've learned that over time. And in the spiritual realm, they call it faith. So we talk about having faith. Do you have faith? Do you trust that this will work out? Most people don't have faith.
Yeah.
So, I talk to my people about that. I talk to my team about that, having faith.
Yeah. That's awesome. So yeah, I've it's just been the hour. What
Okay.
do you want to? So what? So yeah, we're coming to the end here. What are there? Do you want to add anything else? So where can people find out more about your company and?
My website is govcongiants.com. You could Google my name on YouTube. I'm everywhere. Just type in Eric Coffie, Coffie. I've got a podcast, GovCon Giants. Really, my biggest platform is YouTube channel. If people want to reach out to me on Twitter, I'm eCoffee, ECOFFIE, IG eCoffee. So it's very easy to find me. Like I said, I'm all over the place. We're making a big push now. My book, I'm actually releasing a couple books now, and what I'll do, Max, is I'll put on there the book. It's my next book is called GovCon Launch. So you can go to the website govconlaunchbook.com and sign up for the pre-release of my book, GovCon Launch. GovConLaunchbook.com. That's GovCon launchbook.com. You go to the website, check it out, and then register for a early version. Anyone that signs up for the early versions will get a signed copy of the book from me with some additional videos and scroll as well. So it's going to be good. I'm looking forward to it. I've been working on that book for about 2 years now, GovCon Launch, and really it's going to go through my story, start to end. But more importantly, the things that I did to be able to land these, 8-figure contracts. We didn't even talk about it, but during this whole COVID crisis, Max, I picked up $18 million in contracts in PPE for different states.
Wow.
So I raised, as a result of that, I raised $10 million in investment financing for my business. I've got a $10 million joint venture partner that can go up to $100 million. So this
Holy.
thing is real. This thing is happening. And sometimes because I'm a very humble person from where I come from, I don't like to say things because it feels like you're bragging or boasting, and I'm not that kind of person at all. I just want to let people know that the average Joe can do it. Like I said, it's so easy that a 16-year-old kid can do it. It's just more people are afraid of they're holding themselves back. The fear is you are your own worst critic, enemy, and you're your biggest demon. So, and that's the reason why people that are wealthy commit suicide and commit horrendous acts against themselves. That's why people turn to substance abuse, because it's the demons inside of you. It's not the people on the outside that are actually the ones that are standing in your way. You are standing in your own way. So I'd say get out of your way.
Well, that was awesome. I love this podcast. This episode was amazing. Thank you for thank you for coming on. It was amazing talking with you and hearing all the value that you have.
Thanks, Max. Hey, look, send me a snippet, brother, and I'll send me the actual long form, and I'll make it to a snippet, and I'll post it on IG.
All right. Yeah. Awesome.
Okay. All right,
Thanks.
Max.